Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest episode of Founders Take, and for joining us today. My name is Brian Antolin. I am the program manager at LineRun, and LineRun is an experiential career and industry education platform for tomorrow's workforce. We empower our community of leaders to connect, innovate, and grow through media, events, and programs such as today's session. Today, we have three amazing leaders who are here to share their knowledge and experience on building their own personal brands and the lessons they learn along the way that can help you in your journey moving forward. They each are really incredible podcasters. I know I subscribe to all three of them and listen to them religiously, but would love to hear from each one of them before we get going with questions so you can learn more about each one of them. We'll start with Aliou.
All right. Hi, Brandon. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Aliou. I'm the host of The Power of Good Intentions, which is a podcast about people, their life stories, challenges they face, and how they overcame them. I also recently started my own YouTube channel where I share videos about mental models from people like Kobe Bryant, Ray Dalio, and Malcolm Gladwell. Uh, my day job. So I just graduated from my master in information system and data analytics, and I'll be starting in consulting this fall. So this is what I do during the day, and my podcast is a passion project that I started last December. Thank you, and happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Hicks. I am the creator of the Kiss Your Life podcast. You can find it at bit.ly/kiss-your-life. And I interview entrepreneurial thought leaders about their life, about business, how they started, their highs and lows. And I really believe that the entrepreneurial spirit is within all of us. And I want to help people tap into that and really just create a wonderful life.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Justin Nguyen. I'm the host of the Declassified College podcast. You can just look up Declassified College on any podcasting platform and it should be on there. Basically, the whole basis of our podcast is to share the cheat codes to college success. And we do that with 5 to 10 minute episodes. So they're not the longer interview format. It's very short form podcasts. And with it all, we get to splice in content from not only myself, but you'll hear from students across the nation, as well as some great entrepreneurs around the world giving you advice through your own student journey. And sort of everything else that I'm working on, I have a community, an overall community called GetChoGrindUp. And again, that basis is around sharing the cheat codes to college, because when I was in school, I learned a lot of these things that aren't necessarily taught to students. And these are sort of like the unwritten codes that the most successful students kind of learn and they keep to themselves. And I want to share that wealth of knowledge to individuals just like yourself. So that's basically everything that we're doing with GetChoGrindUp and Declassified College.
Thank you all so much for sharing, a little bit about what you do and also how you help your own respective communities in the process. I believe that a big part of personal branding is, being able to help people, and also build a community around the lessons that you impart and share in the process. So with that, we'd love to start with Elizabeth. Personal branding is this huge buzz term, however way you want to say it, especially during COVID and work from home. The primary way for people to communicate is online and through tools like Zoom or Google Meet or Google Hangouts. What is your definition of personal branding, and how has that definition evolved or expanded over time?
Yeah, so I think that personal branding is really who you are as a person. You can't be someone different in person than you are online. And it's really the value that you're giving to others. One of my mentors, Rich Keller, he's really great. If anyone's on LinkedIn, I highly recommend going to look him up and connect with him. He has this whole model of personal branding called One Word, where you basically pick one word for your life. It's not about what you have done, what achievements you've done, but it's about a value. And for me, my value is love. So everything that I do in my life, I want it to do, I want it to be done in love. And his value is that he is a catalyst. So he wants to propel people forward in their lives. So I think that's really important because a lot of people will say their personal brand is like, oh, like I went to Harvard or this or that, and that's like you know, that's really helpful to signal to people that you work hard or whatnot. But I think at the end of the day, you know, relationships are really the most important, and the value that you provide to other people through how you're able to help them is really key.
All right. So my take on personal branding, and I completely agree with everything Elizabeth said. I would say personal branding is really what people say about you when you're not in the room. So it is how you're introduced to other people. If you even think about today's meeting, so I've never met Brian in person, but we had a common contact on LinkedIn. And when Brian was looking for speakers, apparently this common contact we had recommended that he reach out to me. So personal branding is what people know you for. It is, you know, what they remember you for, what they say about you when you're not there. So you want to make sure that whatever you do, and you build your personal brand really through the contact and the interaction you have with people. So the way you treat people, the things you share online, all of those constitute your personal branding. It is what, when someone is just thinking, like if you think, for example, about electric cars, you think straight about Tesla. If you think about like great founders, you may think about someone like Steve Jobs. So it is the the thing that someone associates you with in their head. So when they think about me, for example, they may think, oh, he has a podcast about people and inspiring stories about people's life stories. So this is my personal brand, because this is what, when someone thinks about me, someone I have never met before, they see me associated with that. And if this is something that interests them, then they will look into my podcast and find out more about me. So you want to make sure that your personal brand is something that you truly want to be associated and remembered for.
Yeah, I think everything that both Aliou and Elizabeth said is completely true. And I sort of bring it back to how I think of networking in general. Again, I hate the word networking just because it's just overused and people never really try to explain how to actually network. And the reason that I'm connecting it back to networking is most people think of networking as how many hands can you shake, but I like to think of it as how many hands remember that you shook him. And the reason behind that is if you're just shaking 100 hands but no one remembers you, then you have effectively not networked with anyone. But if you shake 5 hands and all 5 people remember you, then you've grown your network by 5 people. And that's the same exact thing with your personal brand. If someone is telling your brand something completely different than what you want it to be, then it's not necessarily your personal brand. That's just what you think your personal brand is. It's what people are actually talking about you, like Ellie said, behind your back, so to say. That's what you want to sort of really focus on in terms of solidifying your brand and then being able to share that story with everyone who comes in contact with your content.
Definitely. I love the fact that, Justin, you really brought it back to networking, because it's a really great parallel where your reputation, I think a lot of people have heard this before, you know, reputation takes so much time to build, but it can break so easily, where how you see yourself can be completely different from how other people see you, and that disconnect ultimately is what ends up being the issues, or the core of the issues you have with personal branding. So really great insight by all three of you, and it really brings it back to, I think, our next question of point it back to yourselves. You know, why did you launch your podcast in the first place, and how does that really play into your own personal brand? What led you to use this medium to reach and help people? Justin, you have this really incredible podcast that's been able to rise through the ranks over the past few months, years. Love to hear from you first on this.
Yeah, so our first podcast that we ran, the initial name of it was Young and Dumb, and Dumb stood for Dedicated, Up and Coming, Motivated, and Bold. And we thought that that was a really unique way, but what we found out was, like, SEO purposes, it was actually terrible, and no one could actually find our podcast. And the other thing that we learned too was our target market was students, because we wanted to share these cheat codes to the students around the world. But the problem with having a long form podcast is most students don't want to listen to a 30, 40, 60-minute podcast episode for the most part. So what we did with our second podcast, Declassified College, is we wanted to still provide those cheat codes to students around the world, but we do it in a short form, 5 to 10 minutes, so that when you can walk to your class, while you're walking class, you can listen to it. Or since students tend to have less, like shorter commutes to either work or school or anything like that, that's when they can listen to our 5 to 10 minutes and get a quick hit in terms of tips that they can utilize in their day-to-day as a student. So that's sort of the whole basis behind why we launched Declassified College, even though we already had the GetChoGrindUp podcast running beforehand.
Awesome. That's really great. I would say for me, so I'm actually writing a book in tandem with a connection of mine on LinkedIn that I know Justin is familiar with. I listened to your podcast with Eric Custer on that I had met on LinkedIn. Yeah, he's an
Eric's
awesome,
great.
amazing guy. And so he had just DM'd me for the book. If anyone is listening to this, interested in writing a book, ever thought about it, I highly recommend you go on LinkedIn and connect with him. His last name is spelled Koester. And so I was writing the book and interviewing these people, and I was like scrambling to take notes, and it just wasn't a good way to like conduct an interview. And I was already like sharing the learnings from these interviews with like people in my family and friends. And so I was just transitioning to like record it anyway. And I thought, like, you know what, why don't I just like create a podcast? Because I loved listening to it. Like, I was a big fan of like Justin's podcast. I like asked him for like tips and stuff. And so I thought, like, well, you know what, like, if, you know, other people my age are doing this, like, why am I not doing this? So I just decided to go from there.
So me, how I started my podcast is a bit of a weird story, but just so you understand my story. So I'm from Mali, West Africa, and like I didn't grow up in the US. I grew up in 5 countries in Africa before coming here because of my parents' job. And when I came to the US, like in 2015, unfortunately, I had to have a hip surgery, which, was a really tough time for me. I thought I was gonna be a soccer player before. That was my life trajectory. Then the hip surgery came. In the hip surgeries, I started an Instagram page where I started posting motivational quotes and positive quotes and things like that. That was just a way for me to cope with the moment. So it had nothing to do with starting a podcast. It was anonymous. No one knew it was me. Even my friends didn't know I had this page. Next thing you know, little by little, over 4 years, so until last year, it grew up to like close to 5,000 followers. And I never took the time to like meet the people behind the page. And last summer, for the first time, after I graduated from my undergrad, I decided to take the time and connect with the community behind the page. And that's where I met a guy who is my first guest on the podcast. And he was a long-time follower of the page. Every time I post, he's always liking, always sharing, commenting, and things like that. So I talked to him and I found out that he was an executive at Salesforce. He's based in New York. And we had a coffee chat. And he was thanking me for this page that he followed 4 years ago. And it was just this random page, like it's called Billionaires Man Club. It's still active, but for me, it wasn't something that I wanted to launch and do something with it. It was just during my surgery, I needed a way to escape because I was on my phone every day, and I started it. So this guy, he beat cancer, had a brain surgery, and he raised over 100,000 for the Leukemia Society. So I really, really, really love his story. And it was like, how do I share his story to my audience? Because he's part of the community. And so I got the idea, maybe I should start a podcast around people, the stories. It's still around the same theme of positivity, motivation, and inspiration. And I started sharing his story, and then that's how I started connecting with more and more guests. So this is how I came to like launch my podcast.
I love it. It's having the three of you come at it from different angles, but you all see the same need and you're using it in completely different ways. I definitely think that for those of you listening, having the ability to take these lessons, especially the ones that Justin, Aliou, and Elizabeth are sharing now, and being able to apply it to your own situation and how you're able to really bring it back and push it forward is really important. So sometimes taking a step back means ultimately taking the step forward that you really want and need. Aliou, you brought up that serendipitous meeting that you had with your first, who ended up being your first guest, and it really started over a conversation, if I remember right, from LinkedIn, and being able to connect that way and build a relationship. In your experience, do you think that LinkedIn is the best social platform to connect with people, or do you think it's Instagram? I know you're active on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. From your experience, what do you think?
Okay, so actually we had the first chat on Instagram because that's the page where I started my platform. But I would say all thing that all four of us here have in common is we are very active on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is such a great platform to start your any startup, podcast, anything you want to start. LinkedIn is great because the good thing about LinkedIn is it has organic reach. Sometimes a lot of social media are clustered and when you post, people might not see your post because it's just like the algorithm is messed up and things like that. On LinkedIn, when people like your post may show up on other people's feed. So it has the potential to kind of go viral and it has the potential to reach more people. So if you are starting something today, I would say LinkedIn. And then depending on what you're doing, I would say either TikTok or Instagram. TikTok is great because it's also really new. There is no influencer. It's kind of like the Wild West, and anyone can really do something out of TikTok depending on how you use it. And I really like Instagram too because of its tight knit community and your ability to like really create different group chats and talk to many people at the same time. So those are my top three picks.
I would also agree with that. I think that you know, when you're thinking about building a business, building a brand and a podcast, I think that you have to have like 2 to 3 social media um, platforms like in your back pocket that are like your go-to. Like I think going hardcore on like all social media platforms, that's like kind of too much, especially if you're just starting out. Um, but definitely I would recommend LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, um, just for the reasons that Aliou mentioned. I think LinkedIn it's the way that you literally connect with someone. It's a mutual thing. It's not like follow for follow like Instagram, and it's more organic reach like you mentioned, and I think that just the way people come on LinkedIn and they're more business minded, they're more oriented to improve themselves. Whereas like if you go onto like some other platform like Facebook, they're like they're just looking for maybe like some type of like political like or or some type of other I don't know, gossip nonsense from like their friends or something. Whereas like people on LinkedIn, they're really, really trying to like improve their mindset and connect with people and grow their audience or maybe find clients or something. So it's just like a really special place. And then I think TikTok too, because especially, there's a wide variety of people on TikTok right now, but I think as a business, if you can make short form, um, these 1 minute videos, if you can make them really good, like teach people something, it goes really, really far and you can get millions of views for free and you don't need to spend any kind of ad money. I think that's what a lot of businesses, like companies like Wendy's, there's a bunch of other big Fortune 500 companies on there right now that are finding like it's not like Instagram. Like you don't have to spend buckets of money. It's free right now. So I would definitely recommend TikTok as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that you guys both said is completely 100% right. I think every platform has its pros and its cons. Just talking about TikTok, I have my little cousin. He posted his like second ever TikTok, I think, and it was my other little cousin like almost breaking this kid's leg basically in soccer, and he put the "You Gon' Die" song in the background, and he has like almost 5 million views or something like that, and he had like 100 followers at the time, if that. So TikTok, like the virality of it is insane. What I would say with your personal brand is I have a little bit of a different advice to Elizabeth is from doing like my own personal stuff of trying to grow on different platforms. It does get a little tiresome, especially at the very beginning of like trying to figure out how to grow on Instagram. How do I grow on LinkedIn? How do I grow on TikTok? Now I have to like repurpose all my content X, Y, and Z. And it's in reality, like it's great to sort of like think like, okay, I can focus on three things. But I think especially just starting out, trying to walk before you run is incredibly important. Like for instance, I always use the example of Morning Brew. So if for those of you who don't know Morning Brew, they're like a business newsletter. They're essentially trying to make like the Wall Street Journal, but for like millennials and Gen Zs. And it's just a newsletter that's sent to your email every single morning. And what they've been able to do is they only focused on email for, I believe, like 3 years or something like that. They didn't have any social presence. They didn't have a podcast or anything like that. And then this year, they just started to release like their podcasts as well as a few social media channels, specifically on Twitter, I believe. And they've been skyrocketing ever since. But they fully built their foundation on one platform and owned that, and then started to branch out once they had enough momentum. And I think that's the route that I've started to do too. That's why I think my LinkedIn has grown to the level that it did when I was still in school, was because I really only use LinkedIn while like posting very minimally on Instagram and other platforms. I would say focus on one, and if you want to have a presence on others, but really, really focus on that one and become a master at that before expanding.
Definitely. And I think I could really relate to Justin, what you just said about, and I love the fact that you brought up Alex Lieberman and the crew over at Morning Brew, because they really invested heavily on a summary form content that was digestible, that you can read in 2 minutes, but they were really obsessed with growing their email list and building a following and building an audience. And I also believe that you have to have some type of objective when you're doing and choosing which platform, because not every platform is created equal, as the three of you just mentioned, and each has its own really primary purpose. They're good for a universal number of things, but each has a very specific primary purpose, and you have to be intentional in how you're planning this. So we also brought up in the last question, taking a step back to plan forward. You need to know what your end goal is and what you want to do, how you want to use the platform, and how you want to reach people. Not necessarily who you want to reach, because that ends up being serendipitous, but what is that end goal and that net effect, and then building backward and finding out, based on what you want to do, what's the best platform for you. So I think bringing all that full circle really, really helps. Going back to you, Justin, putting content out there, putting yourself out there, and putting your thoughts out there, expose you to a certain degree of risk, where people may or may not agree or see what you're seeing. How do you handle backlash or rejection as a result of people not liking or understanding your content? Do you tune it out? Do you try to incorporate it into your response? Do you try to shape it into what you do in the future? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, before I answer, I want to touch upon Alex Lieberman and Morning Brew just a little bit more. Like they focused on email, and a lot of people don't realize the power of email. I didn't realize it until I looked at their numbers, and I think they have over like 2 million subscribers to their email and like 40% open rates, which is insane when you think about like the reach of an Instagram post is probably, if you're lucky, like 25% of your audience. But the other thing that was crazy to me is they're generating like 30 or 40 million dollars every year on just ads. So that alone of just like the proof of like focusing on one platform is insane. But moving on to your question about like how do I handle backlash, I think I handle it a little bit different from other people. I don't mind getting like backlash and trolls on my posts, but I also don't have a ton of them because since a lot of my content is on LinkedIn, and that's sort of one of the pros of LinkedIn is that most people won't be trolls because their LinkedIn is usually tied to their professional account, and nobody wants to be seen from like an HR standpoint of being that person that's a troll. You can't hide behind like a username. So that is a huge pro to posting on LinkedIn. But whenever I do get those occasional trolls, I try to like make it like my response in a little bit of a witty way. So sort of taking sort of the things that I've seen on Twitter in terms of how Wendy's claps backs to some of their tweets and everything like that, and then doing that same thing on LinkedIn. But that's also part of my brand. I'm not someone to really hold back. I like to sort of speak the truth and speak the things that people aren't going to tell you on a regular basis. So when you're handling these sort of clapbacks, if you want to call it that, you also want to stay on brand with it too. You don't want to just randomly outlash back at them if that's not really a part of your brand. And I think that's the most important thing to really understand when you're answering these trolls.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think that I also don't get like that much like pushback. I like to post a lot of like motivational content and just kind of uplifting stuff, um, just to inspire people. And sometimes I can think of maybe like one time, um, maybe on like a podcast or a DM that you know I met somebody who had like a differing opinion than me or something, but in that instance, I really just that old phrase of like kill them with kindness is just so true. I really feel like for me, you just have to like flip it on them and even just like asking questions of like, oh, like why do you feel that way? Um, and just getting to like the root of it, because I feel like whenever somebody is projecting some type of like hate or something onto you, it's because like they don't like something doesn't sit right in their heart like with themselves. And so I think that's something that you can just show some love towards somebody, and then they'll turn around and support you back. So
Yeah, I agree. I also do not get that many backlash because I like to say that I'm not in the objectivity business, I'm in the subjective business. So people come and they share their truth and their life story with me, right? So someone may open up about dealing with self-harm in the past. Someone may open up about being raised in a household where the parents were taking drugs and things like that. So it's a safe space that I created, and it's a community where when I share, people go and listen to it openly without coming saying that I'm gonna make fun of this person. So I don't really deal with that. One, I guess, backlash maybe is someone who told me that the episode might be too long, and my podcast, granted, they're like 30 to 45 minutes. So it's a different format, and it is not for everyone. And I think part of building a personal brand is also that it is saying, hey, I'm making this promise. I pick this corner. So there are different, on a quadrant, we can pick different spots, right? But it is saying, I'm going to be standing there. This is what I stand for. I make people stories, 30 to 45-minute content. And this is what I'm going to do. If it is for you, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. If it is not, please, there are other people, other podcasts, other things that you can consume. So building a personal brand is also being able to stand for something. So if someone criticizes you for something that you're doing, and when you look back and you go back to the basics, is what I'm doing still in line with what I wanted to do? If the answer is yes, then by all means keep doing it. Don't really listen to the criticism, because what you're doing is not for everyone. Like there is no way you can do something that everyone is gonna love. So it's just about being able to stand on your 2 feet and say, this is what I'm doing. If you like it, thank you so much for being part of it. If you don't, there are other things that you can look at.
Definitely. And it's all about choices and being purposeful. And we really brought that up and fleshed it out with the last question. But I think, Aliou, you really brought it home where, putting yourself out there, it's not for trying to state these are government facts. these are facts according to the way I see things. And having, I think, the comfort of knowing that this, whenever you post or whatever you post, comes from your perspective, and keeping you in that equation and building out from there will help solve any issues you have with backlash, or any issues you have with people not being responding positively to you. I think it's really a matter of perspective. So I think that you all three of you did a really great job in explaining and shaping that. Elizabeth, you brought up a really interesting point about how you approach, podcast and the way that you shape your content. You really drive this really incredible balance between the things that you see, and also how you connect it to your speaker, whoever you're featuring on the episode. So when you create content, what frameworks or guidelines do you use to share your personal knowledge, at the same time connecting it to the other person to help give them a platform, but also keeping your voice front and center
Yeah.
in that equation? How do you
Yeah,
do it?
that's a really, really good question. So I like to interview like all types of people from like all walks of life. Like, my podcast is about the entrepreneurial spirit. So, entrepreneurship is everywhere. And I really like what Ali just said. I just wrote it down. He said, building your personal brand means standing up for something. And I really believe so strongly in that. And like, what I was talking about earlier in the last couple of questions that you asked, like, um, for me, I really believe so strongly in love and empathy. And so I feel like that's really like my voice. So I recently just had a podcast episode um, that I had recorded, and it's coming out soon, where I had interviewed a professor and a founder of like a nonprofit. And she actually is like a vocal and actress, or an vocal and an acting coach. And she was just telling me about like um, how, the world from such a young age um, just is really horrible about kind of ruining your voice and like your inner spirit. I think society does that to us. And it just really, really hit me. And I thought, I don't know anything about singing. And so how am I going to conduct this podcast? I don't know how to sing. And so, you just kind of have to have a true north. Like everybody, I think that everyone is sort of similar in what they care about. Like they like to help people. They're all doing it to the best of their ability. And so you just kind of have to like feel people out and kind of get to know them and really understand what they're about, and just like pull out those stories, almost like an investigator.
Definitely. And I think one of the things that I realized compared to when I first started podcasting to where I'm at now, is at the very beginning I used to think, okay, if I could get this guest on, it's going to make my podcast go viral, and people are going to come to see my podcast because I have X guest on. But what I realized was, yes, that might be the case for a little bit of the portion of the people that come and listen to my podcast. But to get them to actually subscribe, they need to fall in love and they need to understand my story. And when I realized that, then I started to focus more on being able to not overshine my guests, but sharing my story alongside my guest story, so that the person who is coming and listening to the podcast for the first time, they're like, oh, okay, the backpack kid story was really cool about how he went viral on Instagram, but I want to learn more about Justin and his story and how he is talking about the entrepreneurial spirit on the GetChoGrindUp podcast. And that's what I think led to the growth of the Declassified one, because I really focused on sharing my story of when I was a student and how I got internships, as well as interweaving other student stories into my content too. And I think that's what's really resonated with a lot of the people that not only just listen once or twice, but they've listened to multiple episodes for the most part.
Yeah, for me, so I mean, I really like what you said, Elizabeth, about the world like to take away your voice. And Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, the Black Mamba, one of my favorite athletes of all times. He said we tend to like grow backward. So as you age, the goals that you had as a kid tend to like disappear because society is telling you to do X, Y, Z. And I think the same thing with starting a podcast is true. It's like when you start, you have a clear vision of what you want to do. I want to do X, Y, Z. I want to share people's stories. I want to share and inspire, motivate people to do better with their lives. And then when you start, you may kind of get confused. But what I try to do every time I'm working on an episode is first principle thinking. Why did I start this podcast? Is this episode in line with what I wanted to do when I started? And what am I, if I was an audience member listening to this, will I be inspired by this episode? And every time I do that, I mean, I go back to the first principles. I try to ask questions that will really take the listener to his story of growing up wherever it is, from Africa, from Asia, from I don't know, South California to where they are today, and getting that storyline of because stories have shape and understanding how the guest can go through that experience and at the end feel inspired by it. So every time, when I'm editing, when I'm working, it's about going back to the basics. And I want to do a podcast because it's not something that I'm doing. I mean, hopefully, if one day gets big and I can make money out of it, that would be great. But it's not something that I'm doing and that I need. It's a passion project, right? So every time I want to be able to say one day, when I look back at it, let's say if I'm done, I don't think I'm going to be done anytime soon, but I want to be proud of it. So I think it's very important to really stick to your core principle and do something that you can be proud of. And I think when you do that, at least when I do that, it works for me.
Definitely. It's whatever content you end up producing, whether it's a YouTube video, a podcast, post on LinkedIn, a little video or a little clip on TikTok, it's a reflection of you. So you always have to ask yourself, is this how I want people to see me? And will they understand who I am through the content that I post? And that is, I believe, really essential, not just to podcasts or content in general, but also personal branding as this whole category of how do you approach yourself and how do you connect with other people. And Justin, Aliou, you really connected that one string on, starting from where you are and then pulling it back, but then also being purposeful about the steps you take. We keep on bringing up steps and a process. That this whole personal branding stuff is a process, and it's not an instant satisfaction game. If you want that, you definitely don't invest your time in trying to build yourself, because you're just not going to get it initially. And if you do, that's actually bad, because you don't know what will happen afterwards. And I think this really brings up one of the core issues people have with posting on LinkedIn or starting a passion project or starting any type of medium is they don't see the numbers right away. And Justin, with you doing this for quite a bit of time, how do you keep yourself motivated to continue to produce content, even when the metrics and the numbers aren't exactly what you were hoping for and haven't been for a while?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The road of content creation isn't filled with laughs and butterflies and fancy looking flowers and everything like that. It's a hilly road that you have to go up and down. You never really know what's on the other side of that mountain that you're driving on. And when it comes to content creation, of getting over that hump of those low moments, what I like to do is I'll look back at some of the comments that people have left on either like podcast reviews or sent me in DMs or anything like that, that really like, okay, I know that my content is good. It's just maybe I'm going through a rough patch. I just need to go back, optimize maybe for the algorithm or whatever it may be, so that more people are getting impacted by my stuff. And I think the only way that you can get through these low moments is if you genuinely create content around something that you believe in and that you actually want to do in the future. I create content because I want to help college students, whether I'm helping one person or a million people. That's me helping someone out, and that's all I care about. Or if you look at Mr. Beast, right? He wants to just help people all around the world. He wants to make a change on the world. And when you're looking at his content, every single piece of content that he does, he is giving some piece of money away, whether it's a solid gold brick, which is insane, or if he's giving his friend a Lamborghini for the day or something like that. He thinks that the whole point is that he's making the world a better place step by step and making you smile or you happy because you're watching that video. So I think when you generally have a mission in the back of it, the motivation might dwell sometimes, but it's always there, and it's waiting for that jump start to kind of get back on the ball and everything rolling after that. So that's what I would tell you. Find that one thing that you really care about, so that when you're getting 5 views, 10 views, 15 views on an episode or a post or whatever it may be, you're excited because that's 5 or 10 people that would have never seen that in the first place.
I mean, amen, Justin, to that, amen to that. Because I think one thing that we really tend to get confused about when we look at social media is we forget that those likes, those love or whatever on LinkedIn, those are people and their stories. Those are human beings taking the time to like watch what you did and loving your stuff. So like you see 1 like, you see 2 likes. No, that's a human being that said, hey, you did this and this is great for me. And for me, how I motivate myself, same thing that Justin says about, like, there is this story in Greek mythology of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was a guy who was pushing a rock up the hill. And obviously, every time the rock kept falling down, but he kept pushing. And this is the same thing about content creation. You're pushing up the hill little by little, that rock, and it's building. One day you might get to a point at the top of the hill where it's gonna have a snowball effect. And this is how content creation works. So like little by little, every time you go up, you're building the rock and you're getting stronger and better. And long term, it's a long-term journey. It's like Netflix did not become Netflix overnight. They were first shipping CDs and DVDs, and now they are creating their own content. So whatever you're doing, even with your podcast, it's like you're going up the hill, and one day you will see, like, it will just be effortless. I mean, when I started my first episode, like, to get to like 100 downloads, it was like, took like a month or something. And like now, the more you publish, you have loyal subscribers, people who are looking forward to your episode. And then, so when you launch it, you already have people you launch it to. And now the next thing you want to do is, when the numbers are not what you expected them to be, remind yourself of why you started it and keep at it.
Yeah, I totally love both of what you guys said, and just to go further and like go on top of that, I actually started like a small challenge for myself. I started like posting on LinkedIn every day, and I think that's really good to like get on a schedule, whether you're going to like post every day or upload a podcast like once a week, twice a week. That's really good. And for a while, like for my LinkedIn post, it like wasn't picking up, and so, maybe there were some days where I was like, like maybe I'm not going to post. And so there was one night, one of those days, where I was like, you know what, I'm kind of tired. Like I'm just not going to post tonight. And I thought, well, you know what, like I had some people DM me a couple of times, like seems like they like it. So I thought, like what the heck? So I posted it and went to bed not thinking anything, and it just completely blew up and like went viral. And I thought, like, what? Like really? Like this one? Like, did you not see my other posts? Like I thought they would have been better. Thought you would have liked those ones. But yeah, so I think you really just never know. And it's just important to um, understand that your voice is something to share with the rest of the world. And I really think that it's selfish sometimes to hold back.
Yeah, because definitely agree with you, Elizabeth. You have something to say, and you never know until you put it out there if it's something that people are going to resonate with. And even if they don't, it could be that, okay, they're processing it and they're going to come back to it later. And you ended up giving them something to really question and to challenge themselves. So you never know what the actual net effect of what you're doing is. And the most important thing you can do is just put it out there.
You're right.
And I think definitely pushing that boundary and being able to have the courage to say, you know what, the only person who should care about what I'm saying is me.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, having the ability and the intention of trying to help people in the process through what you were thinking, what you were feeling, really, it comes at the core of what this whole thing is. And to me, and I think the three of you would agree, personal branding is about helping people. And it's about how can you use your voice, the resources, the tools, the community you have to help amplify other people in the process. And I think as long as you keep that in mind and keep yourself in check, that this is what this whole process is, it doesn't matter what the actual numbers are, because it's the net effect of how the impact you have on other people.
Mm-hmm.
You might not see
Yeah.
it through metrics, but it comes back
Yeah.
in other ways.
And also, just to add on that, like, you never know how one post is going to impact someone, like maybe like a week later, like maybe they're still thinking on it. I know that's happened to me. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, you know what? I remember reading about that like 2 days ago, and it continues with you like throughout the day. It's just powerful stuff like that that maybe you don't think about, and your reach, even if it is just one person, and it touches people's lives.
Definitely. One person is one person. One person is someone that you've helped. And I think going to sleep at night knowing that you've been able to help at least one person definitely does a lot for you and your own personal being. So thank you so much for sharing that. Before we open it up for questions from the audience, if we were to wrap things up and say, if you can give us your top 3 tips for, building and maintaining your brand online. Elizabeth, we'll start with you. What would they be?
I would say the first one is to be true to who you are in person. And the second one is post exactly who you want to be in the future. Like don't post something and think, maybe like 3 months down, like, oh no, I'm gonna have to go back and delete that because my future self, like, that's not acceptable, right? Like you want to build the brand that you want to show up for in your higher self. Does that make sense? So, and then my third one would be to make sure that you're engaging with other creators. I know that's hard sometimes when you are really focused on doing your own content, but I think that's really important to build a community of like-minded people and support each other.
So to add on to that, and quick thing that I wanted to add from the previous question, one piece of advice from Tim Ferriss is, just launch your thing. Don't look at the numbers for like a quarter. Like do like a quarterly checkup of how you're doing. But looking at the numbers every day is not gonna help anyone. But for my 3 things, I actually have kind of 4. So if you study marketing in college, I'm sure you heard about the 4 Ps. Place, price, product, promotion. That's kind of out of the way. In the online world, it's a different thing. And there's something I learned called the 4 Cs. So it's content, consistency, community, and collaboration. So content, you want to make sure your content is top notch. That's something you have control over. Maybe you don't have control if people don't listen, but you have control over the quality of your content. So keep increasing that. Consistency, you don't build a brand overnight. You don't expect your first post to go, even if it goes viral, those people may see it and then, okay, no, I don't care about it. So you want to be consistent and about the message you're spreading. Community, you want to build a community around your thing. So if you think about the morning brew that Justin mentioned earlier, it's like a community. Like they have inside jokes, you follow them, it's like you feel part of something. And you want to do the same thing with your brand. Last thing is collaboration. No one can make it alone. There's an African proverb: if you want to go fast, if you go fast, if you want to go alone, you can go fast. But if you want to go far, you have to go with other people. and I'm kind of messing it up, but you want to collaborate with like-minded people. And those are like the four things that I try to keep in mind whenever I'm working.
Yeah, I think both of you guys had some great points, and definitely I don't want to just reiterate everything that you guys just said. So in terms of for my three tips that I would give is the first one, I'll go a little bit more tactical. The first one I would do is really figure out who you're trying to speak to. Elizabeth said, talk to your future self. For me, who I'm speaking to is like the college student who feels lost. So now that I know who I'm speaking with, I can gear sort of the way that I speak to them, the languages that I use, and maybe the memes that I use as well, and like our newsletters and everything. So once you know who you're talking to, you can be a little bit more specific in how you're speaking to them with your content. The second thing that I would do is figure out how you're going to engage your community. For instance, for me with the podcast, it's really hard to engage your community because there's no real comment section for podcasts, at least not yet. So what I did is I have a LinkedIn company page for my podcasting page, and typically LinkedIn company pages get terrible engagement. But what I did was I created a post on that page, and every single day what I'm doing is I'm asking 10 students to just go and comment one question that they have about college. So yes, the students get some engagement on that post, and they engage with the brand and the community. But I also have my next content ideas for my next season because they're all asking a different question. I'm like, oh, okay, this question consistently keeps coming up. Maybe this is a question that a lot of college students have. And that's a unique way to sort of like kill two birds with one stone of being able to engage a community, but also finding new content to produce in the future. And then the third thing that I would say is master your story. When it comes to personal branding, everything's going to go back to you. They're going to stay following you because of who you are and what you're doing. And if you don't know what your story is, then it's going to be really hard for you to relate back to whoever's on the other side of the mic, the video, whatever content that you're creating. So if you haven't mastered your story, that can be done pretty easily. Just start hopping on phone calls with strangers that you connect with on LinkedIn. That's what I did. I used to hop on like 10 to 15 phone calls every single week, like 3 years ago or so when I was first getting started. And that allowed me to really understand what I was about, how can I say it, and how can I do it in a very quick and short-winded way rather than spending 30 minutes on tell me about yourself, which I have had that happen on one of my podcasts, which was terrible. But once you can start to master that story, you can really manipulate it in whichever way you want to connect with your audience even further.
Definitely, and really incredible advice from all three of you. Can't tell you enough how inspiring it was just to hear, the three of you talk and share those little nuggets of wisdom through things that you've learned and things that you experienced. I think it's really, really powerful. And thank you again so much. And I think to Justin's point, being able to understand your story and harnessing the power of your story will also provide you with the keys to how to approach creating content, no matter in what way, what shape, what form. Because if you have the control over how you want to communicate and how you want to tell and share what you went through, that ultimately, at least from my experience, from my perspective, it is that actual block to taking that step to posting online and being consistent with it. It really starts with you and your own story, and taking that piece out, once you figure it out, will then open more doors. So I really believe that's an incredible way to end the conversation. And again, really, really happy to bring three of my favorite podcasters here to share. And thank you again so much. But before we let you all go, so for those of you watching, one thing you guys should do is also subscribe to what these guys are doing.
Yes.
So, Aliou, Power of Good Intentions podcast. So, powerofgoodintentions.podbean.com, also available through your regular channels as well. Where is?
Thank you.
So,
And just
okay.
feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you want. I mean, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you'll be able to see like whenever there is a new episode.
Definitely. Elizabeth, so Kiss Your Life podcast, episode 10 just dropped. So make sure you subscribe and listen. This is really, really cool stuff. Love the story of how, if not for COVID, you would have ended up at Harvard.
This is true. Thanks for listening to that one. I thought it was really cool.
Definitely. I can definitely relate to it.
Yeah.
Harvard, yeah, it gets a lot of play, but you know what? The first time you're there, it's the aura. It really hits you. It's
Really?
It's Goodwill Hunting all over again.
Oh, wow.
and of course, with the Justin Declassified College podcast, make sure you tune in and listen. Really incredible insights from last week. I know a lot of really cool stuff's coming up this week. So subscribe and listen.
Season 5 drops next Monday. So
next Monday, geez, living in dog years, man. All right, and then for us, linerun.co/events, we dig deep into tech and business and the different careers and people you should know. So we have data science and user experience for those of you interested in tech coming up in July, a live roundtable just like this on Zoom. And then we dig deep into what's going on in different ecosystems. So we just did New York. New York was incredible, but now we're going to take a virtual road trip to Boston and see what's going on there. And then somehow, some way, not on a plane, we're going to end up in Austin that same month. So I don't know. Well, maybe we'll do a vlog on that. But until then, again, can't thank all of you three enough. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hope all of you watching were able to get some really great insights from our speakers today. Make sure you support them and check out the incredible work they're doing. But until then, we'll see you for the next one.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having us on.
Thank you.
It was so fun.
Definitely.
Learned so much from these guys.
Same here.
Same here.